Hello and welcome to Coach's Decision, a weekly talk show that covers sports topics from the Bay Area and beyond. My name is Thomas Todd. I'm the sports guy from Good Morning Monterey Bay. I'm joined here on the phone by a man who is a friend to all athletic trainers. It's Daniel Zarchi. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, man. How you doing?
So you're polite to all people who work in and around training rooms, correct?
Certainly compared to you and Peyton Manning, yes.
Me? What did I do?
Well, you are Peyton Manning's biggest fan, so this is going to be a fun conversation for us to have later on.
We're going to talk about that. I did spend a lot of time in training facilities, never getting worked on as an employee for a minor league baseball team, but seeing a lot of ice, a lot of hot and cold baths, a lot of like smaller, more effete men rubbing much larger men's muscles. So that was.
Did you ever see in your trials and tribulations in minor league baseball, did you see many women trainers?
Zero. Absolutely zero. I think it would probably happen on a higher level in sports, in the more professional level where they have more facilities and can separate a training room from a locker room. But in the low minors or, anywhere in the minors, everything's pretty self-contained. I never think I really saw a woman in the locker room at all because it's just so compact that there are just nude men in showers everywhere. There's really nowhere to keep eyes away from, I guess you'd say.
And certainly no journalists who, cover those teams or anything like that, certainly to the same extent that they do the higher levels in the majors.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Vanderbeek, I think, is still covering the Modesto Nuts. He was covering the Modesto A's back then. He was the only real media member that really mattered, so it was just him around, no females. Okay, we will talk about Peyton Manning. We will talk about Manny Pacquiao, some Ronda Rousey, a little bit of baseball, and then we're going to cry our eyes out about how much money Roger Goodell makes versus how annoying he is as a person. First, some business to take care of. You can always find our show, Coach's Decision, on iTunes or YouTube by searching the name of the show. Please subscribe. We're looking to boost our numbers and get the show spread around. So tell your friends, listen to the show. It's once a week. It's the most consistent show you're going to hear because it does come out at the same time almost every week, and you're going to get that fresh sports take. If you could do us a favor, though, and you do want to buy some sports merchandise, we have a couple of sponsorship partnerships, fansedge.com and fanatics.com. If you go to our website, coachesdecisionksto.com, and click through to either of those vendors, they will send us a nice little kickback every time you purchase gear. So do us a favor, get yourself some gear, do yourself a favor and the ones you love, and save yourself 20, 30, even 40% off of all the sports merchandise you can dream of. Danny, what's your next sports merch purchase?
Let's see. I'm pretty well stocked for Giants jerseys. I've got Buster Posey, Willie Mays, and Madison Bumgarner.
That's a nice run right there. That's pitcher, catcher, outfield. That's right up the middle.
I've got a Curry jersey, and I've got a Kaepernick jersey. So
I think I'd give it
to the 49ers. Yeah, give it to the 49ers. I might want to go with an all-timer, so Jerry Rice maybe, or Steve Young.
You should get a Chip Kelly hoodie.
Or buy a Bill Belichick hoodie and just chop off the arm.
Yeah. Sun's out, guns out at Levi's. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into it. This show is not going to be as much fun as most of our other shows because our heroes...
That's not our fault.
It's not our fault. No.
Because our heroes suck.
They have fallen. I mean, the two guys that we're going to talk about to kick off the show, one is in every single commercial. He's always ready to give a good media hit after a game, during a game. He's just the guy who's always there, who's so media savvy and so... out and out rich because of his success on the field, his ability to turn himself into a brand, and to become this sports broadcaster's favorite football player, probably in the history of the game, rivaling my love for Emmitt Smith. So having him, and then one of the most internationally famous people, Manny Pacquiao, having him going through what you said earlier, some trials and tribulations of his own. So we'll start with Manning, who... We see the lawsuit against Tennessee that these 6 women have put together and are going against the university for creating a hostile sexual environment throughout its recent history, going back a couple of decades. And cited in that report is an incident that was reported on in the 90s and has had several addendums to it since then. But this is the first time it's come about since social media era, since the what do we call this era where everyone overreacts to everything?
The 21st century?
It's even
24-hour news cycle?
But it's even more recent than that. It's the Twitter goblins. Like, I don't even know what to call them. They're not trolls.
Let's jump into it before we qualify it too much more. So, just because we have to get some of these caveats out of the way, a lot of the facts that came out in the most recent news story came from this lawsuit, and as a result, are not necessarily, should be seen as what they are, which are part of a lawsuit, not the facts as the parties agree upon them. Obviously, they're going to be slanted. Anybody who has been around a lawsuit, who's written a complaint, who's read a complaint, who's been sued, anything like that, knows that that's how they write these things. End of caveat. Now, it's really, really damning.
Now the mooning begins.
There's only so much you can make up. That's not my legal opinion, but my God.
So I guess what happened was the way the story got reported in the 90s is it got quashed by the university, by the Manning family, saying, Peyton was playing a harmless prank on his teammate, he was mooning, and it just kind of went away because it was 1996 and there wasn't the level of scrutiny that there is now. So now that everything's kind of dug up and we can go back in history and kind of realize that we should have cited, we should have seen more into, we should have not believed everything we were told. We're just much more skeptical now, I guess, as a society, and the skepticism leads one to believe that, yes, Peyton Manning did place his 19-year-old genitals on a woman's forehead who was at work, in the Tennessee facility. No, he was probably not mooning someone. Yes, he probably got more credibility for his statements because he was a popular white athlete in a popular white university. So there's a lot of different layers to unpack about this. What is your opinion on how this plays with Manning going forward?
Well, what I think is particularly bad, that's all extremely bad. But then you look at what the Manning family did to this woman, the things they did to the other members of the team in an effort to cover it up. There are allegations that Peyton, or more likely Archie, went to a teammate and tried to get him to corroborate the story that Peyton was just playing a harmless mooning prank. And when that guy refused, they basically pulled some strings and he lost his student-athlete qualification. This woman lost her job and couldn't work in the area. They basically slandered her name and tried to make her look like, a promiscuous woman, and of course played on all the racism of the region by talking about all the black athletes she slept with. It's just, it's horrible, despicable stuff.
The SEC is trouble. Not just because of its geographic location, but because it always seems to be the school, and I guess you can say Florida State too is in the ACC, but it just seems like the region and the culture and the high profile of the athletes and the universities and the teams themselves is where the problem is. They have such an infrastructure where they can control narrative, they can control media, and they can quash stuff like this. Like, I remember I was 10 or 11 when this happened, but I don't remember a whiff of this ever coming down into, the newspapers or my sports center that I watched every day. I never saw any of this.
Yeah, and I remember I was reading a thread about it, and there was somebody who was in Tennessee who said, who lived in Knoxville or something, and he said, "Oh, I remember when this happened," and then it kind of went away. And so it might have been a local sports story, but if the guy who's going to become the next Peyton Manning were in college now and he did this, football and college football a lot better than I do, but let's say Andrew Luck did this while he was in Stanford. We'd hear about it. We'd know. It would be a really big deal.
It would be on CNN. It wouldn't be on ESPN. It would be on CNN.
Yeah, this would not be sports news. This would be real news.
And for how long, we don't know, and we can't honestly predict. But you do think about, like I mentioned, the Jameis Winston case, where how long do we talk about crab legs? Not even
and why
mentioning.
Didn't we talk about rape?
We did talk about that, but we also blew up about crab legs when this is, I don't know if that's the maneuver Peyton Manning was pulling, if there's a name for it, but I don't understand the difference between the way white quarterbacks, black quarterbacks, white athletes, black athletes are construed. I don't understand it because I guess I grew up in an era where black quarterbacks were just a thing. You know, Randall Cunningham was a quarterback before I became a conscious being. Warren Moon was a famous quarterback before I became a thing. 1989's NFL Man of the Year when I was 3. So I never lived in a world where every collegiate quarterback was white and every NFL quarterback was white and, you know, African-American people were seen as skill position players and defensive linemen. You know, I don't know. So it's hard for me to categorize this as someone who, like you, is a millennial. So I don't really even know where to go with this. Where do you go from it with a racial standpoint?
I mean, I think all of the racial elements were there at the time, and you have to recognize that for people who are born into the dynasty, like the Mannings of the world, like the Harbaughs of the world. I mean, I'm not saying Harbaughs did anything wrong, but when they're part of an institutional family, they're going to have all these advantages, and there are going to be things that we just didn't hear about as a result of the legacy.
Yeah, the names are right there on
likely. Well, and that's not a racial thing so much as that in practical effect it is, because you can't be the father of a dynasty unless you were able to be a part of that system 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Or even hundreds of years ago. There are people attending universities in America as legacies that are, 6, 7, 8 generations old, no big deal. And I'm going to give you a guess as to what color most to all of those people are. So I have one more question for you before we move on to the boxing story. Do you think this affects Manning's post-football career? He seemed poised to join a booth or an analyst panel. He could probably keep doing commercials until the end of time, like Brett Favre is still, got 2 or 3 gigs. How much do you think this affects his post-football life?
It's hard to say. He might, pull a Ray Lewis, and when he sees a potential controversy, just fade away. I mean, Ray Lewis has been around for studio stuff, but I don't know. It's hard to say. I kind of think he'll fight through it, and he'll still be around, and there are just going to be people who have to say, hey, remember that guy who did that awful thing back then? And most of the country is just going to kind of ignore it and embrace him as a guy who they like to listen to.
I guess the part that can be forgiven is the fact that he was 19, and what kind of knuckleheaded things did 80, 90% of us do as 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. I guess it's always more offensive, the cover-up. That's the part that really sticks in my craw, is the actively ruining other people's lives to try and preserve, Manning's scholarship or try to, keep him in Heisman contention and preserve,
right.
his what we call now his legacy. So I guess it's not really going to affect how much money he makes. He may lose the Papa John's gig. I doubt it. He may lose the Nationwide gig. I doubt it.
He also owns dozens of Papa John's.
Yeah, Papa John mouth-kissed him after the Super Bowl. I mean, his lips done toucheth his face. I mean, I don't think he's going to lose that. But there is an advocacy group out there advocating, Ultraviolet, I believe it's called, a women's group, advocating he be pulled from all his sponsorships in the name of, rising up against sexual assault, which has been a huge movement in this country for a long time, but it's been really prominent the last few years.
Right, and just to reiterate what you were saying, just because he was a knuckleheaded 19-year-old doesn't mean that this was any less traumatic of an incident to the people involved, to the victim, things like that. So
no, but it's easier for the population to move on when it's like, oh my goodness, a 19-year-old kid did something really stupid. That's the part that's easy to move on from. The part that's not easy to move on from was the aftermath, ruining people's lives, lawsuits out of court, defaming a woman in a book. All that stuff is much more, not criminal, but much more indefensible than the actual act itself.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion. Okay, we'll move on to Manny Pacquiao.
Speaking of indefensible.
I know. It's so tough. This is an interesting case because Manny Pacquiao is running for Senate in the Philippines, and I'm glad I have you on the show because you're my Filipino political expert. You have all of the
Manila correspondent.
Yeah, you're the vanilla from Manila. Danny, and I want to ask you, Manny Pacquiao said that same-sex relationships and same-sex sex, I guess, is worse than animals, because he said that animals do not have male-male and female-female relationships, which A, is just wrong, and B, is a really ignorant thing to say in general, and just a very mean-spirited thing to say about a portion of the population that exists in every country, not just in America, where we are getting better about recognizing it, and a place like the Philippines where it is not as accepted. They're a much more religious country than this in an evangelical way, and are very against same-sex marriage and same-sex rights. So he had a different audience for this, but it still affects his worldwide appeal. I mean, he can't do anything again, right? At least not in North America.
You think people are willing to watch him get punched a bunch?
No, because they want him to box Floyd Mayweather, who never punches anybody. But, absolutely. People will watch him fight. But he was rooted for by almost everyone unanimously. Floyd Mayweather was the villain. He's the moron that we all root against because he's so brash and throws his money around and isn't characterized by good speech, let's say, or diction and syntax and being careful with his words. That was Pacquiao, who's this sweet, accented foreigner who sings karaoke on late-night talk shows and just was universally beloved. But to have this come out in his political life and completely tarnish his image over here in the States and probably most of Western Europe, he's done. Nike pulled its sponsorship. That's the big one, If Nike's out on you, what else you got?
Yeah, I mean, boxers, the best boxers in the world are not always the best people in the world. Let me just put that as a general statement.
Mike Tyson's youth, for one.
But yeah, I mean, it kind of shows you where we are in the world, that people were willing to continue to watch and root for Mike Tyson after his, after rape cases and things like that.
After time served in prison.
After time served in prison. And now Manny Pacquiao says a horribly homophobic remark, and that, I don't know if this makes it more defensible or less, but is based on his religious beliefs. As he reiterated in his apology, if you can call it that. So is that going to be more damaging to his reputation than, all these other terrible things? Floyd Mayweather's serial abuse of women? Like, I don't like any of these people, but why is this the magic bullet when those other things aren't?
It's more that he played against type. Floyd Mayweather has never pretended that he was a humble, joyous, well-liked man. He's never cared about that. He just wants to go in, make 30, 40, 50, 60, $100 million a fight, gamble half of it away, and laugh at everybody. And so he plays the villain role, so we have no expectations. Is it horrible that he hits women? Of course. And I detest the man, and I would never root for him. And if he stood right here in the studio, I would say, I don't like you. And I would not like you to meet any member of my family. I would not introduce you to my girlfriend. I just would not do it. But the opposite has always been true of Manny Pacquiao. It's like, I want to hang out with that guy. He seems like a lot of fun. He's a national hero in his country. He comes over here and he's a hero to people in this country. And now he's done an about face, at least in his image. So I think that's more that it's a turn. Yeah, it's more of a fall from grace than it is anything. You can't, if you're Floyd Mayweather, you can't fall from grace. The worst thing he could do is lose a boxing match. He's already lost a significant portion of any fan base because he's done all these dunderheaded things. So I guess it's more just disappointment. What he did is not worse than what Floyd Mayweather does, but it's so unexpected.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly disappointing, but I wouldn't be surprised if he still has a boxing career. I mean, if he
people will pay. I mean, the streets of what'd you say the capital of the Philippines was? I forgot already. The streets.
I think Manila.
Yeah, Manila. The streets empty out when he boxes. So people are going to watch him fight internationally. People are going to watch him fight in this country. So I I really don't know. We're going to see more Manny Pacquiao, but it's not going to be as hunky-dory, I guess, as it used to be. Any final thoughts on this? I'm actually going to read you a quote before you have final thoughts, because the only thing worse than boxers is usually boxing promoters. And Bob Arum, who's not a bad guy, but came out and said, Pacquiao's comments were made to a Filipino audience where same-sex marriage is not accepted as it is here in America. And Manny is a convert of enlightened Christianity, which does not believe in same-sex relationships. But to people in the United States, his words can only be viewed as hate speech. If I was running Nike, I would have made the same decision they did. You obviously agree. We both agree, I think, with what Bob Arum said, right?
Yeah, I mean, a fun fact, according to Wikipedia, the Philippines is one of the most gay-friendly nations in the world.
Is it really?
And the most LGBT-friendly in Asia.
Well,
so,
that's not really a shining beacon of rights.
Yeah, and well, same-sex activity is legal, and gays and lesbians can serve in the military, but there's no marriage or domestic partnership.
Okay, we do need to take a quick break. An awful series of wind and rain here today. How's it been in the East Bay?
Oh, I got soaked leaving work today because I didn't realize it was going to rain.
Oh, I thought you just walked through a fountain or something in your fancy schmancy corporate building.
An upside-down fountain.
An upside-down fountain, a snow globe of San Francisco. We'll also take a quick break here to tell you about one of our sponsors, 99 Bottles, located in downtown Santa Cruz. It's your premier dining and drinking destination if you are going to the Santa Cruz area. Lots of drinks on tap. Every beer you could ever imagine. Hefeweizens, IPAs, German Bocks, Pilsners, Reds. I can't really name all of the beers. Sours, Belgians, farmhouse ales. They have everything. They also
Do they have any Irish stouts?
Of course they have Irish stouts. I can't tell you which ones because there's probably 7. And probably have a stout Irishman behind the bar as well, knowing what I do about 99 Bottles. Also full food service, TVs with sports, a patio that is dog-friendly, that looks out on Walnut Street downtown between Pacific and Cedar. Just a great place and a great sponsor of Coach's Decision. Okay, Danny, one more story, and then we can start having fun. I'm ready to have fun, right?
Yeah, fun. We need to have fun.
Ronda Rousey lost to Holly Holm in November so badly that she was taken to the hospital for her injury. She was hit pretty hard several times. And she said on Ellen the other day, on Ellen DeGeneres' show, that when she woke up in the hospital, her first thought was, I want to kill myself. I don't know if I can go on living. I'm not quoting this. I don't know if I can go on living not being the person that I was. You know, I think she had lost her own air of invincibility and felt vulnerable, and it led to her actually contemplating suicide. The thought didn't last. She remembered, she loves her boyfriend, Travis Brown, who is another MMA fighter. She said she wants to have his children and wants to continue living her life. What kind of athlete does it take to, after a loss, really think about killing yourself? And is there something wrong with the sport of mixed martial arts that would get a person to a place like that?
Well, there's a very easy answer to your question, Thomas.
I know, I just set you up for it, but because that's my point. I mean, these people have to train so hard and get into such an egocentric mode and such a mode of invincibility that they believe they can't be beaten or broken, that when they do lose, they think things like this.
Yeah, I mean, we remember the way it was with Ronda Rousey before this fight. It was, most of her fights lasted under 20 seconds.
We each have 100 pounds on her, and we're scared to death of her.
Yeah. She's probably more than 100 pounds.
No, she fights at 135. I clock in around 232, 235 most days.
Well, I'm a bit above that.
You're tall. You're a tall man. You're a tall man.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's such a mentality. It's your life of training and reinforcing. You have to have some sort of belief that you're invincible to go in there and receive that sort of punishment. And it just does terrible things to the mind. I mean, this is a completely different level, but if you've ever known somebody who got really into acting and spend every day getting into character, and then the play ends, and they're just lost. They don't know what they are, who they are, what they're doing, because they've been this thing for so long that now when they have to kind of realize what's left, it's hard and it's depressing. And and it sounds like that's kind of what happened with her. She lost this air of invincibility, this air of like she's the toughest one, she's unbeatable, and then it kind of took her a second to realize kind of what else she had in her life.
Yeah, and I guess a counterpoint to Ronda Rousey's story is someone like Jim Kelly, who was the quarterback of the Buffalo Bills. He lost 4 straight Super Bowls, a couple in semi-dramatic fashion and a couple in, well, let's just say 1990s Cowboys fashion. But he had in his life his son, whose name I believe was Hunter, who's since passed away, but that was his inspiration. He never was a guy who was super negative. He was never in the headlines for failure. No one considers Jim Kelly a failure in his life because he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, and he gave that speech at his Hall of Fame induction ceremony about his son and how much his son inspired him. And I'm glad Ronda can find some solace in the fact that she does have loved ones and she does want, the gift of children and the gift of life and everything. I just worry about the mentality of pro fighters because I've seen enough of the reality show The Ultimate Fighter or the stuff leading up to fights and stuff back when I was super into mixed martial arts that just everyone seems a little disturbed, but it seems to be more about the culture than about the individual people.
Yeah, I mean, you've spent a lot more time also around MMA gyms than I have. So
those are small time. Those are just guys trying to look good for the bar scene. It's not really anything major. These guys want to fight, but to get to the level of actually competing, at the SAP Center or at AT&T Stadium in Dallas, you have to actually get to a really strange place in your brain, I guess is the thing here.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have much more to add other than I'm really glad that she's gotten to a better place. And
that place is the cover of Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue.
And hanging out with Seth Rogen and Amy
Schumer.
Schumer, that's the word.
Yeah, let's mention the Sports Illustrated swimsuit covers. I don't think that should be a thing. I think that if you want to have a swimsuit magazine, you should have a swimsuit magazine. I don't think a sports magazine should have anything to do with swimsuit models, personally. But the fact that the 3 covers came out, one is the skinny blonde Hannah What's-Her-Face, one is Ronda Rousey, so representing the female athletic form, and then the third one is a plus-size swimsuit model, which I appreciate. At least they're going for some diversity if they're still going to have a kind of abhorrent concept of a swimsuit issue parading as a sports magazine.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's the kind of thing that's not going to last much longer, except that it almost certainly is. And it's always interesting when you see these articles on SI.com or in the Cauldron, which is, their kind of separate site, which is not really divided. And they're calling people out for being sexist or things like that, and then, you scroll down and there's an ad for the SI swimsuit edition. It's like, come on, guys, have a little perspective here.
Well, at least ESPN, they've made some missteps recently. I'm still mad at them for the whole Bill Simmons debacle, and the Grantland debacle, but ESPN has,
Let's talk about the announcement today.
Okay, we
ESPN.
can. We can, but I want to talk about ESPN. At least I feel like they did it a little bit better with, the body issue. They took what SI was doing with the female form and made it about, this is what athletes look like, male, female, basketball, football, track, golf, swimming, and they just made it about the spectacle of people rather than cleavage, and
yeah.
you can see a lot of stuff, but I feel like that's a better model for a sports magazine to do than to just have a completely unrelated topic. Sports Illustrated doesn't host the Miss America pageant because that would be silly.
Yeah, I mean, I love the body issue because it feels like it's doing something in a new way, and they're taking what would be, lewd images or something like that, but they're not presenting them in a sexy way. They're just saying, look at these athletes, and a lot of them are not, skinny little people. I mean, or even kind of what you would consider to be kind of a stereotypical body type. But, they've had Prince Fielder in there, and then they've had guys like, Steven Jackson, who looks like a statue of a Greek god. I mean, so people of all body types, and again, like presented not in a sexy way, but in a way where you can look at, well, except for Matt Harvey again, but where you look at them and think, oh my God, like this is what the people look like who are doing these amazing feats of athletic ability.
Yeah, and the best part about the ESPN body issue, the pages are stuck together a lot less, I've noticed, than the swimsuited issue of SI. It's much more easy to flip through.
Okay, Thomas.
I know, I had to be lewd just to get on their level. Let's talk about, and now I'm blanking on the name of it because it just came out today, but Bill Simmons. The Ringer, thank you, launching a new website, probably just going to be a copy paste of Grantland, and Lord, I hope it is, because I am having Grantland withdrawals. I'm going to deep dark places on the internet to try and find these writers that I was reading regularly and loving while they were members of Grantland. I can still find Zach Lowe and Bill Barnwell on ESPN, who somehow after the death of Grantland have more prominent spaces for their articles than ever, which obviously it's ESPN's tacit admission that they were doing Grantland a disservice before by not pumping those articles more. Where do we find Jonah Carey? He's working for 4 different websites. Friend of our podcast, Jonah Carey. Where do I find Mark Titus?
Yeah,
he's not even writing right now. So I don't know.
Jonah Carey's podcast is through the Nerdist now, I think.
Yeah, and he's doing some work with SI and a couple other different sites. He's kind of a free agent, but he's such a good writer.
And a lot of the other writers for Grantland, particularly the pop culture ones, are working for MTV now, which is interesting.
Well, because ESPN had no use for them. They said, we don't care. We're done with this pop culture thing. We're just sports. That's what we do. So when Bill left, so did the drive for pop culture. So yeah, 4 or 5 of them went to MTV. A lot of the editors have now joined up with Simmons for this new website, The Ringer. So I'm intrigued. I want to see who he hires. And actually, what I tweeted today was, I'm happy that it exists, and I want to see Bill prove that it is a sustainable moneymaker, because that was one of the big things that, other than Bill's constant fights with management at ESPN, the fact that it didn't make money. It brought in advertising revenue, but it never covered the cost of everything. So that was a reason, if not the reason, that Grantland was shut down. So I'm happy to see, hopefully, his partnership with HBO, a show that's going to come out over the summer or the fall, whenever they get around to doing that. I hope all of this bundles together to become a creative entity that I can enjoy and that will make money for somebody so that it can stay around and no one can complain and we can make fun of ESPN for completely failing, one of the most talented and idea-driven people in sports.
One interesting question I saw today is, what do you think, which website do you think comes out? The Ringer or the Undefeated?
What's the I don't know what's the Undefeated?
It's Jason Whitlock's
Lord.
ESPN poorly conceived race and sports crossover website.
Get me out of here. Get me out of here with Whitlock. I can deal with him in small doses, but I can't read his tweets. I can't watch him on TV for long periods of time.
Involved.
I know, but oh my goodness.
His blog now on J School is it's just hate. It's just vitriol.
Yeah, and I understand he played an important role in my life, being one of the, as a white guy, I really appreciate hearing black journalists' opinions, because I didn't get to grow up that way, and I didn't get to view sports through that lens my entire life. So I often think, well, this story has a racial twinge to it. I'd like to hear from, a black journalist or a black athlete or someone who has a unique perspective, and I'd like to integrate that perspective into how I feel about sports. So, Michael Wilbon has always been really important to me because I love PTI and I love Wilbon. Whitlock I thought would be that guy, and he has some really good and interesting opinions, but a lot of times he's just mean, and a lot of times he's just wrong. And it's really difficult to grapple with reading his stuff, and I just kind of want him shot into the sun.
And a lot of other black journalists really hate the way Whitlock is, really hate Whitlock's opinions, and really hate that to a lot of people, like young Thomas Dodd, he was the guy who would, present the black opinion.
Well, I mean, you have to be careful whose opinion you take in, no matter what color or background they have. You have to be able to have an analytical brain and look at it and say, I'm going to listen to your opinion. I'm going to process it. If it doesn't sit well with me, I'm not going to agree with it. And you have to filter information that way. And it's becoming harder and harder with more and more media outlets just throwing random things out there. It's hard to grab onto anything that you feel is true or come up with a unique opinion anymore. You just kind of have to gravitate towards a person at this point. And, Simmons has been my guy for a long time, and I think he's just got a lot of great ideas, and I think he keeps running them out, and he will continue to do that. So I'm still enjoying his podcast, and I'm looking forward to his show and the website.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been listening to every episode of the Bill Simmons podcast, and it's better than it ever was. So
yeah, no,
I totally also agree. Very, very excited, and excited that he gets to. We don't exactly know where the money's coming from. He's not affiliated with a major media company. This is, his show is coming out on HBO, but as far as we know, they're not financing this website. But obviously there's money somewhere because he's hiring a lot of people, and it's going to have really good content.
Look, he was making multiple $1 million per year at ESPN. He sold so many copies of that book of basketball that he can ride on those coattails for a while. So he's not hurting.
Think he's financing it himself?
I'm not sure. I'm not going to go out there and say because I don't know. I just like to enjoy the content, but I'm never worried about Simmons and money. He was the highest paid journalist in the country pretty much, so, or at least in sports. So I'm not really worried about him. And, I do love that it's called BSPN, the Bill Simmons Podcast Network, because it does troll his old bosses over at ESPN. I'm looking at the clock here. We have a couple minutes, Danny, before we bring on Tory to do Tory topics. Scott Boras is at it again. Not talking long-term deal between the Nats and Steven Strasburg. It looks like he's going to push Strasburg into free agency. What do you think is the end result of this? Do you think Strasburg is out of Washington? Do you think this is just a negotiating ploy to raise the dollar value? What do you think Strasburg's value is?
I think it's massive, and I think he is kind of going to pave the way for Bryce Harper as these young stars who sign these kind of unconventional deals when they were young, and now, rather than, they were so high profile that they couldn't be tempted into like an 8-year deal when they were 22 or something like that.
Evan Longoria being the first one to do that, or even Madison Bumgarner's contract, pre-hype Madison Bumgarner.
Or like even Carlos Carrasco, or guys like that who like had 1 or 2 good years, and people said, oh, well, maybe that guy's going to be good, and then they sign him to a 5-year deal with 2 team options and, an annual value between 10 and 20 million.
The player's secure, the team has a long-term deal for less than market value if he stays good. Yeah, no, I totally understand.
Yeah, it's going to look like an amazing deal if this player ends up doing what the team thinks. But instead, for Strasburg and, and like I said, Harper after him and then Trout after him, they're looking at this landscape, and there really aren't very many free agents out there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Particularly people this young.
Not a lot of players.
They're going to make an amazing amount of money.
Not a lot of players
What's
his
the
age.
Downside?
Yeah, injuries. And the fact that they call him 75 and sunny because he needs conditions to be perfect to pitch. He has underwhelmed as far as his hype, which was probably the only logical conclusion to the Steven Strasburg story because the hype was so big. But you are right that very few players his age reach free agency, and when they do, they have to demand high dollars, even if there is a giant risk attached to him.
I mean, and it's crazy. It just shows you, what a ridiculous expectation was for Steven Strasburg. He's got a career ERA just over 3. He's got a career strikeout per 9 of over 10, and he's kind of been a disappointment.
Yeah.
But he's going to be by far the best free agent on the market, and he's going to earn,
$200 million?
200, 300 million.
300 million? Ooh. I think that's a bit. I mean, I'd say 240 would probably be the cap, but I'm not at all comfortable making free agent value number judgments because I'm horrific at it. We can probably go on to MLB trade rumors and see what people say, or find a blogger better than us.
He's going to be 27, 28 when he signs his deal. So
yeah, and it's going to be 7 or 8 years.
7-8 year deal. I mean, we'll see if the year of the opt-out continues next year. I mean, maybe he'll earn $30 million for the first 2 years and then opt out and earn 35 the 6 years after that. I mean,
so
who knows?
You're talking about giving him that Goodell money? What do you think of Goodell? 9 years, $180 million.
Worth every penny.
Tell the truth, Danny. Tell the truth.
I mean, Roger Goodell does one thing really well, which is that everybody hates him and nobody looks at the owners.
Yeah, I mean, and he doesn't seem to care.
That's his one job. That's his one job.
Well, and to be in the movie Draft Day.
Go out there. Yeah, you know that movie was unrealistic when people actually cheered for him on Draft Day.
Get that SAG card, Roger Goodell. Get that SAG card.
Yeah, he could use the insurance.
He needs a pension.
No, I mean, his job is to go out there to get booed on Draft Day, to, do the uncomfortable interviews, or not do them, occasionally talk to Peter King and, earn his millions of dollars. And he's the face that everybody hates, and when you go past the individual fan level, people don't really hear about the owners. We hear about Dan Snyder because he's like one of the worst people in the world. You hear about Jerry Jones because he's a lecherous old man.
He's an old
That's
toot.
it. You don't hear about all the rest of the owners who are doing these terrible things, who got the players union to basically drop the ball and let their players have unguaranteed contracts. I mean, all these other things about the NFL that are terrible, and it's Goodell who's taking the blame, and he's being handsomely rewarded.
And the league's more popular than ever.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's going to end us talking. We went from bad thoughts to kind of middling thoughts to now we turn our attention to our producer, Tory, because she brings in the fun, the litheness, the spirit, the bunny of my heart. Hello, Victoria.
Gross.
I know. So gross. Okay, what do you got for us today? Let's keep it light.
I have a quiz for you guys.
You told me you had a quiz,
Okay.
and I knew that, A, I was going to be excited because I love being quizzed. B, Daniel Zarchi, you love trivia just as much as I do, which is almost not possible.
Yeah. No, it's going to be great. I'm really excited for this.
So, Dick's Sporting Goods revealed the top best-selling jerseys for the year.
Okay.
What were they?
So
Let's make some guesses.
This is 4 major sports plus soccer, probably?
It's just NFL.
Oh, it's just NFL.
Just the NFL jerseys.
Danny, do you want to go first or second?
What were the top selling NFL jerseys?
Top
this year?
10 best-selling NFL jerseys.
How many do you have?
I have all 10.
Oh, there's 10. Okay,
Yeah,
I forgot the number already.
It's a top 10.
Okay, the top 10. Danny, you want to go first or second?
I will go first.
Okay, and let's get dates. This was for 2015?
Yeah, this was just for 2015.
Okay, go ahead, Danny.
Russell Wilson.
Yes, he was number 10.
Wow. See?
Wow, barely in, just sliding right over the line.
I'm going to sneak in with Cam Newton.
Number 5.
All right.
Tom Brady.
Number 1.
Tom Brady, really?
Yeah.
Yep. That was the big news that came out of it.
Okay.
That was their big finger to Goodell.
Okay. Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning, number 7.
Okay.
Rob Gronkowski.
Number 3.
The Gronk. Oh, that's a good one. All right, now I'm going to have to start
I should have saved it.
digging a little deeper.
Starts getting a little dicey here.
It does start getting dicier. I'm going to go Adrian Peterson.
No.
No.
Oh, man.
I lost. All right, keep going. You have another guess, Danny?
Let's see. Marshawn Lynch?
No.
No,
Marshawn.
running backs getting no love whatsoever.
Well, I did go first, so I won the round.
Oh, no, I gave it to you already, Danny. You win.
So, other people on there. Andrew Luck.
Oh, Andrew Luck, okay.
Antonio Brown.
Quarterback.
Antonio Brown, okay, that
That's
makes
a good
sense.
Odell.
Oh, Beckham, yeah.
So, here's where...
Is that it?
The 2 weirder ones for me.
Oh, okay.
Luke Kuechly.
You know what? That's so funny.
He was number 2.
That's so funny because it crossed my mind and I went, nah, everyone loves Luke Kuechly, but who buys defensive players' jerseys?
Number 2.
Dang it.
Ahead of Gronk.
Dang it.
And here's the one that really threw me. Joe Hayden of the Cleveland Browns.
Joe Hayden.
What? He wasn't even good
Number
this year.
6.
What morons are going to Dick's Sporting Goods?
Cleveland Browns fans.
You need to be going to fanatics.com and fansedge.com, clicking through our website, coachesdecisionkso.com. We'll get those
But they
analytics.
don't sell Joe Hayden jerseys.
Where they do not sell Joe Hayden jerseys, and for darn good reason. He's a good cornerback on a terrible team. That should not even have been. I want to see who number 11 was and bump them up to the top 10.
I was just like, what? One, why is a Browns jersey even in the top 10?
I mean, if it was Manziel and people were wearing it like as underwear or to dig ditches in or, you know, to go out to the...
If it was somebody like Antonio Cromartie, it would make sense because he probably bought them for all of his kids.
Oh, zing.
Oh, man, I wish we still had a link dump. We could link that video in. But okay, Tory, next topic.
So here's the fun one. Dwayne Wade got Kobe Bryant a Netflix subscription to enjoy during his retirement.
Now, Danny, since you won the trivia, I just bought you a 3-day subscription to Hulu. Because that's all I could
hang.
Yeah, it starts tomorrow around 6 a.m. So you want to get up nice and early and start streaming some old SNLs or something. I don't know what's on Hulu right now, Mindy Project or whatever's on Hulu.
I could watch the James Franco trying to save JFK TV show.
Yeah, exactly. It was only good till about Sunday morning. That pretty much exhausted my gift giving for the year. So.
Well, we should ask D. Wade to hook us up, when we retire.
I guess the thing is that he's going to be so bored.
Yeah, it was giving him something to do.
Okay, because I know athletes watch a lot of media because they're on planes a lot, they're traveling a lot, there's not a lot to do. So they watch, there's guys who are just, all I do is watch Netflix. Mm-hmm. And that's what they do. So
Kobe can watch all the 30 for 30s.
That's true. He probably will have one about him sometime soon. Maybe the 81-point game. Maybe the him and Shaq relationship. What if I told you that 2 of the 10 best players of all time played on the same team and hated each other? Oh, yes, I'm watching this. Thank you. Kobe, how does my butt taste? Go ahead, Tory.
ESPN's Reese Waters makes an impassioned rant over Kanye West's claim that he is the Jordan and Curry of music. Drops a bunch of stats and concludes Kanye's really just Charles Barkley.
Oh, has he not won like the Grammy for best rap album, which I guess
no album of the year.
No album of the well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Barkley never won a title.
Yeah,
he
no rings.
Says a lot of stuff that no one should take seriously. Probably pretty terrible at golf.
And never been the #1 best-selling album that in any year that he's dropped one.
Yeah, Danny.
He's Barkley.
He's like the Derek Jeter then. Never won the MVP. Always pretty good. Always pretty good.
Yeah, Jeter, though,
not $53 million in debt.
Yeah, Jeter, who's $53 million in debt?
Kanye West?
Yeah, well, that doesn't make any sense.
But I just got out of law school, so that doesn't sound that bad anymore.
Derek Jeter would never have dated a Kardashian. He kept it B-list, C-list, like super hot B-list and C-list.
Are you calling Minka Kelly a C-list celebrity?
Have you looked at Minka Kelly?
Lists, cups, I don't really know the difference. Yeah, I love Minka Kelly. I miss Friday Night Lights. I want to watch that again. All right, Tori, a couple more.
Jalen Rose on Mike and Mike. If you don't spend time with your Valentine, Derek Fisher will.
What? Derek Fisher needs to be careful. You got to stop dating your colleagues' exes. Now, I listen to Jalen and Jacoby a lot, and I heard Jalen Rose talking about this, and he said, Jacoby asked him why this happens, and he said, well, it's easy to date someone who's already dated an NBA player because they know the lifestyle, they get it. It's easy for them. It's why, when a high-profile woman like Kim Kardashian dates an athlete, she just keeps dating athletes because it's easy, she's attracted to them, and it's easy for them to be like, oh, you understand the lifestyle. But, man, that is hot fire at Derek Fisher, especially a guy who just lost his job.
Spitting game.
Danny, I promise I'm not going to hit up any of your exes, and I know for a fact you're not going to hit up any of mine.
We don't need to talk about this anymore.
Yours are at least polite. One more, Tori, and then I have an announcement.
All right. So, using ESPN's trade machine, you can trade the entire Sixers team for Kobe Bryant.
Oh, because the salaries match?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I don't even. We're gonna do it now. I don't even know what to say about this. Sixers are terrible. They're gonna stay terrible. Kobe's terrible. Maybe he should play on the Sixers.
Oh, but Mitch confirmed the obvious on the upcoming trade deadline.
Mitch Kupchak and you are you're tight.
Yeah.
Just you and Mitch.
Yeah.
Does he call you Tory or Victoria?
Buddies.
What does he call you?
He calls me Tor Dog.
Tor Dog.
But he confirmed the obvious. He said Kobe's not going anywhere.
Well, yeah, because he's just standing behind the three-point line jacking up shots. He's not playing defense, shooting 4 of 11 in a game, in the All-Star game when there's no defense. How do you shoot 4 of 11? Just dunk the ball.
Oh, God, speaking of All-Star weekend, Doc Rivers tunes in and says, honestly, accidentally turned it on, and JJ was in the middle of missing his last 4 shots.
Yep, that's about
Sounds
it.
about right.
All right, Tory, thank you for coming on. Thank you as well, Danny. A very impassioned discussion with you. I was happy to have those debates.
Yeah.
Hopefully next
I really
week.
hope we can have a show sometime where we're not talking about, racism and sexism.
Well, we can.
Sexual abuse.
We do care about stuff. I mean, me and you, we do actually have things that we care about. But I'd really like the athletes to just behave for a week so I can come on and just make, Derek Fisher jokes and Kobe jokes next week. That would be fantastic.
See, but even those are based on Derek Fisher not behaving.
Yeah, but it's funnier. It's funnier because, consensual at least. Thank you, Danny.
You remember when the story came out? This is quick. Remember the story came out that we had the first week, in 10 years, without an NFL player getting arrested?
Yes.
Oh,
And
it was
turned
a
out
month.
that wasn't true.
And that it wasn't
Was a
true.
month.
In the last 6 hours of it.
Oh, okay, Danny. You can catch Danny on Giants Pod on Twitter. We're also going to be doing some Two Guys, a Glove, and a Coke Bottle, a.k.a. Giants Pod podcasts. Thank you so much, my friend. Any parting words?
Go Giants and behave.
We will. All right, and thank you to Tory. I'm going to go ahead and mute you before I give a special thanks to the Zwirling family, and especially Michael Zwirling, celebrating his 25th year owning KSCO. It's been a fantastic run. I've only been here the last year or so, but I've had a really good time and gotten a lot of really good support from Michael Zwirling. So thank you to the Zwirling family, and Michael especially. Happy 25th anniversary. We look for 25 more here at KSCO Radio, Santa Cruz, Salinas, Monterey. You're on 1080 AM and 104.1 FM.